Um, I welcome back Shaheen from Tesseract. You will remember Shaheen from our cyber awareness sessions that we ran about a month ago. I'm fortunate to have Shaheen back working with me to bring my vision to life, as I wanted an education approach to launching this AI policy as opposed to sending this policy via email or a SharePoint link with no context. This is an opportunity to reinforce an education piece around the importance of ethical use of AI tools and how you can protect BCNA's sensitive data. Also, keeping in mind that we adhere to BCNA's communication and style guidelines when utilizing AI. The purpose of the AI policy and why it exists is it's a framework as a guideline ensuring ethical use, protecting our privacy and security, preventing data breaches, ensuring that AI systems are secure and resilient against cyber attacks, which is crucial for maintaining trust with our members and stakeholders. At BCNA, we want to facilitate innovation, thus creating an environment where AI is encouraged, however, still protecting public interest. We will have an opportunity for Q&A at the end of the session. If you have any questions during the session and you just want to park them, please just drop them into the chat and we'll go back to them at the end of the session. And over to you, Shaheen.
Thanks, Sandra. Lovely to see everybody again today. I'm really looking forward to this. As Sandra noted, a bit informational in terms of what the policy is, debunking some myths, a bit of a conversation around some of the key elements of that for BCNA. But I thought we'd start with a bit of an icebreaker. You won't be quizzed this time, just a little video that you can watch. Sound okay? Yeah? Oops.
Wow. Hey, Jay, this project might need a bit of zhuzhing, but you're the big enchilada. Holla back, Warren.
The most capable individual to undertake this task. Please let me know your thoughts. Best regards, Warren? Huh.
I am genius. Oh, genius.
So a lot of little hidden messages in that video, of course. Probably the biggest one is, all this hype around AI means that it's here to stay, particularly when big companies like Apple and Google are embedding it in the devices that you're walking around with every day. So, I mean, look, there's a lot of communication, a lot of work happening across Australia in particular and globally around AI and ethical use and some of the legal and privacy implications of that. And we will talk a little bit about that today. But obviously, as Sandra noted, the purpose is really at the launch of this policy for BCNA really provides the framework in terms of how you might be able to use it. It won't have every single answer in there. It really is that high level framework sort of guideline in terms of use. As you start to commence on your journey around integrating it with your business processes and frameworks and how you actually operate, obviously, is a business decision, and you'll work through that. Sandra will send you a link to that shortly. You can actually read the policy. It's been formally launched. It's the first iteration of it, and I'm sure it'll go through future iterations as you start to mature a little bit through that journey. Let's start with the key definitions. And if you remember the security awareness training we ran about a month ago, we sort of scratched the surface a little bit around that. The policy does actually start to detail, what do we mean by AI and what are the components of that. It is a broad subject matter. There's lots of information on the internet. There's whole studies over it. But I think what's quite pertinent for the organization is to understand what's the difference between artificial intelligence, machine learning, and generative AI, which is probably the most relevant aspects of it. You could call everything in there under the bucket of artificial intelligence, and it is the technology that sort of emulates human intelligence in many different ways. And machine learning and generative AI are effectively components of those. And really, we thought we'd go through a little bit about each of those in terms of history. So we might start on machine learning. With you might know this already, but the capability for machine learning has been around ever since the invention of computers. In fact, you probably can find videos on YouTube of early computers that were probably the size of your office, running checkers and playing chess and things like that. So it's always been a fascination for humans to get computers to be like us. Probably the important thing to note is a lot of it's really born from statistics and mathematics and sort of algorithms that people have written that do that. And yeah, as early as the 1950s and early 1900s, we were playing around with that. Obviously, you've probably heard about computing power and innovation, and all that has really accelerated the way that we can adopt these types of technologies. AI being one of them, machine learning being sort of a key component of that. I think of my early days in IT, like 20 years ago. There was always machine learning capability. It was usually a team of data gurus sitting in the corner that were running some crazy things over massive data sets. Might take them 2 days for them to complete it. That would generate a report. We would take that report and that would start to help us devise, programs and business rules and things like that, until we finally might implement it in an IT system that would effectively make decisions. That sort of circle and process that you would run through could take years before you actually got to a point before it was implemented in a system doing something live. Fast forward to today, the capabilities of computers and technology and even phones that we've got allows us to do those pretty much instantaneously, which is fantastic. As we saw with the video before, the things you can do in real time. But then there's inherent risks with that as well. If you cast back to the 20 years ago, we had all these layers of quality assurance and people looking at the data and the reports and making decisions before it even got close to being implemented in a system. Now, again, the risk is you can just switch it on and it will do things if you allow it to. So, early use of sort of machine learning of particularly in the economic area, if you think about Wall Street and predicting the economy, a lot of work in there. X-ray machines, speech recognition, and if you've got a data analytics area, predictive analysis has been around for quite a while. Then we talk about generative AI, which is probably the biggest sort of buzzword that we've heard over the recent few years in this industry. Again, we've been playing around with that as humans for many, many decades. Early computers trying to emulate text recognition and speech and all those types of things. The big industries have invested heavily in this, which is where a lot of the innovations come from. You can think about NASA and space and defense, of course. But if we talk about the consumer world that we generally live in and touch and feel, video games have been playing around with it for a long time. Particularly, playing against a computer needs to have a bit of intelligence in terms of how it operates. Healthcare as well. You think about sort of what COVID did to us as a society. There's been a lot of work and money spent in terms of how do we do things faster, better, particularly detecting disease and all those types of things. And certainly marketing have been taking advantage of it, generating new products and generating product descriptions. And even now we've got AI that's able to generate videos as well. So that's probably the story around generative AI. Fast forwarding to today, where we're launching the policy for BCNA. If you have a read through it, it's quite succinct but quite detailed as well and specific around some certain areas. The policy components talks about 7 areas that really need to be factored in before considering using AI and continually as you use it. The first big one is the ethical use around it, and there's legislation already in Australia around privacy and ethics, and that comes in the form of the Australian Privacy Principles, the APPs. I thought I'd very briefly show you, and I'll drop you the links to this one. They are published by the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner. There's a quick guide that talks about them. Every organisation should really be thinking about them as yours is in terms of how you implement that. Quite interestingly, the privacy principles and the Privacy Act haven't changed for many decades until recently because of AI. There's been some tweaks made to it. Most recently, there's been some guidance that's been sent out around specifically around charities and non-for-profits as well. So I'll drop the link in there. Talks about some of the key points around that, around how you manage data and manage personally identifiable information. And then also the privacy principles have been modified slightly, specifically on commercially available AI products because of the importance of it. And you can talk through some of the top 5 key takeaways. Again, probably some of the key things which aren't a surprise. The obligations are on us as individuals and businesses. If we're going to use it, happy days, do it. But ensure that we're managing data effectively and information, and that we have the right controls and policies in place. I think in here it does talk about ensuring that you do have a policy for AI use. Hence today, Sandra saw it was coming, and now it's live for everyone. Some of the other components of the policy shouldn't really be a surprise. Transparency is a really important one, ensuring that if you are using it in services and products with your customers, that you're notifying them that you're using it. They might have a view around that. I understand in BCNA, currently you shouldn't be using it to record meetings internally, so be cautious of that. Confidentiality, as we mentioned before, again, a bit like security awareness training that we did, doesn't matter that it's AI, but probably more so is being very careful that you're not putting any sort of personal information or even commercially sensitive information that BCNA has into those systems. As we know, they store the data, they use it themselves for their own gains, so I'm going to be cautious there. The accountability and the responsibility angle is really important. So when we talk about legal ethics and all that, in Australian law and legislation, it is your responsibility, both as an individual and as an organisation, that you uphold those. The policy is there to help you with that, and to provide that framework in terms of how and when you do use these things. Training, today is the beginning of that. A little bit of information, the policy itself, and then as you start to use the products and roll it out, there obviously needs to be training in terms of how to use them safely and securely. Security, we'll talk a little bit later. There are a couple AI products that you will be allowed to use. There's some constraints and some guidelines around that, but that means it's already gone through some process of assessment around data security and IT, which is important for any bit of software. And obviously, finally, the compliance angle. Just like anything else you do in the organization, whilst the policy is there to provide the framework, you should still be adhering to all the other policies and guidelines and rules within BCNA, whether it's acceptable use, whether it's comms and marketing, there's all sorts of things that you will need to abide by in there. And this doesn't change that at all. The policy does talk about some do's and don'ts, and that just further sort of gives you a little lower fidelity around some of the things that we talked about. If we talk about the do's, again, make sure that we're complying with BCNA's policies. Don't be distributing confidential, security classified information through it. You've got to meet the obligations to all stakeholders, including members, around integrity, privacy, confidentiality, and human rights, which are all enterprise level things that you already should be doing. Consult with the IT manager, operations manager, and verify the safety of tools that you're using. Again, we'll talk about a couple that you can use, but yeah, that in the future as well, if you're thinking of others, always consult the IT operations manager. Regularly monitor and review AI tool usage. So Sandra and IT do have methods that they monitor everything in your environment anyway. So AI is no different to that. So you're safe and secure, of course. But then if you are employing it within your business lines and your teams, there are other ways that you should be employing in terms of how you review the use of it, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well once we look at the tools. And of course, before you use it with any other people, you've got to disclose that with stakeholders. If we think about the actual solid don'ts, again, further talking about the PII and making sure you're not putting data in there. And we have to be very cautious around not breaching the Privacy Act on behalf of BCNA. Don't use tools when you're in a meeting. Refrain from inputting data that's privileged and confidential. And don't rely solely on the AI. So this is really important. As good as they are, you should always be verifying the data that's coming out of them before you use it, and in particular, ensuring that there's humans in the process of reviewing that. A good example of that is you've got a comms and marketing team for customer experience. If you're producing some external communications and it's been generated by AI, absolutely, you still have to go through the normal process of getting that cleared and reviewed through them. So ensuring it's on brand, ensuring it's got the right messaging, and obviously that it's accurate. So, and yeah, I wouldn't generalize anything that the AI does. Again, just ensuring the deep validation of what it's producing internally. Which then brings us to the two that has been approved currently with BCNA. So you got ChatGPT and Grammarly. And so we thought we'd spend a little bit of time. This isn't actually in the policy itself, but we'll talk about the good things and the bad things with these two products. So ChatGPT, I mean, it's probably the one that's changed the game the most. It does have the capacity to process large amounts of data quickly. That doesn't say do that. Obviously, be careful what kind of information you put in there, but it does have that sort of grunt power to do that. It does excel in sort of the automation of tasks, generating content. So I know lots of people with small businesses are now starting to use it to generate their product descriptions for them because it comes out quite clean and well structured, and saves time. Again, it still requires you to tailor and tweak it and tune it, of course. And yeah, it's highly available. I don't think I've heard of it going down since it's been launched. Some of the risks with it, it lacks a bit of emotional intelligence, although some of the newer versions of ChatGPT are getting pretty and quite scarily good at that. Increases risk of over-reliance. So again, it can be quite addictive once you get into these tools. They can be quite big time savers. But I think, again, that human touch, that human layer, that human review is actually quite important. And if you remember from the security awareness training that I ran, we proved through conversation with ChatGPT that it does actually store your information. So everything that you're typing in there, it will keep it for months. And I think it even mentioned that some human moderators will be looking at the data. So we know that it does that. If we look at Grammarly, the technology is actually quite similar between these two, but they've obviously targeted their niche around efficient and effective spelling and punctuation and grammar. So it's definitely been tuned to that. It's really good at excelling into the tone adjustments and understanding how you want to speak and provide that messaging. It can learn that, and it's really good at summarizing sort of text and generating things for you there. So again, very similar, but much more targeted around that than quite a generic approach that ChatGPT's got. There are risks with that. Obviously, quite new, Grammarly. There's been some reported issues with performance around it, and the AI failing with too much data being putting into it. I'm sure they'll fix that because they're quite popular now and making good money. There's reports of Grammarly's AI being generating content that may seem correct, but it's factually inaccurate. And so then that might lead to false information. And then I went digging into some of their terms of reference just to understand what they do with their information. And this particular statement at the bottom here was there. It said information and data will be shared with a small number of thoroughly vetted partners for the sole purpose of you with the Grammarly experience. So I don't know who the small number of vetted partners are, but they've been quite honest in saying that they will do that. But yeah, once again, being cautious around the information you put in there. So these are the two that are approved. Again, there's a whole range of tools that you're allowed to use within BCNA. We thought we'd take a minute to plug that as well. There's an approved applications list that Sandra will share. Again, you can request software, but we urge you to first have a look and see what's available before you put in the request. A request doesn't necessarily mean approval. Obviously, like any organization, there needs to be a finance and procurement angle for cost effectiveness assessment around it. There needs to be that assessment around legal privacy and ethics, and obviously the IT and cybersecurity elements. All of that will form the decision, as you would normally think. I don't know if you wanted to talk anything more about that, Sandra, in particular, some of the work you've been doing recently. Oh, the mute.
To share the link to the approved applications. Yeah, so just if there is a tool that you would like to use in your area, first point of call is to go via the IT portal, put through a software request, and we'll have a look at the business case, the requirements around that, and whether it is also safe to use as well. And yeah, you'll need to go through that process first with the IT portal before a decision is actually made. And always use as point of reference the spreadsheet that I'm about to share the link to for approved applications. Yeah, so that's it.
Thanks. Well, good. And probably the final point I'll make is obviously the AI policy does provide that, high level guideline and framework, and does actually note that these two products are available. It doesn't specify how and when you should use that. That's obviously a business decision within your organization. How would you use it? Do I need to involve comms, marketing, legal as part of my process that uses it? So just be mindful around that. But in fact, it's a pretty exciting time that you're allowed to start venturing into this as an organization. I'm sure you'll have a lot of fun doing it. Really, that's probably all we had, and happy to open it to any sort of questions and discussion if you like.
Thank you, Shane.
Emily?
Hi, I just wanted to, I listened to half of the thing yesterday, and so I'm back to hear the whole thing, scheduling issue. But I just guess it was touched on yesterday as well. I receive resumes from people quite often, and it is so obvious when people have used any sort of AI to write that, especially younger people don't maybe. Yeah, I just guess that's a biggie, that yes, they might be good tools for that first draft, but sometimes I know, especially when I'm concerned, they're just as easy just to learn how to do it yourself.
Yeah. So it's really unfortunate. I'm finding it's sort of playing on our human nature of being lazy, unfortunately. So a lot of people, we want to use it just to accelerate things. I think you're right. I mean, be cautious. It can be quite obvious. I think yesterday I think Devon was mentioning it, and Susan, that it's quite obvious when people have just blatantly used it in the way that it's written at. You'll generally find that there's a lot of US American spellings of things, if the Z's instead of S's and things like that. So yeah, absolutely. Good point.
Yep.
Catherine?
I will be honest, I haven't read the AI policy yet, and maybe I'm being a bit of a devil's advocate here. I'm wondering, are there any proposed ways you think are okay ways we could be using artificial intelligence?
Good question, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've just dropped the policy into the chat, and it will be residing on the policy site in SharePoint. So you can have a read of the policy, and hopefully that can give you a bit of a framework guideline around that.
I'd probably recommend to start conversations within your team. I think that's what the policy gives you. It gives you the right to start thinking about that. We've got a couple of approved applications in there that you could use. But just like any new system or function or capability, all right, how do we actually exploit that to our benefit? And how do we ensure that we meet our obligations from all the different rules and regulations that you need to run, both internally and externally, right? So again, I think further to my point before, this won't give you every single answer. I think aligning to the government's sort of recommendations that if you're going to approach AI as an organization, whether you're a small business or a large enterprise, first thing to do is to ensure that you put the policy framework in place. Gives you that high level framework and guardrails in terms of what you want to do. But absolutely encourage you, Catherine, to start thinking about, all right, I've got some ideas that start to converse internally. That'll probably draw you to, back to Sandra potentially around some of the tech things, maybe to your comms team around any implications there. And then, potentially even legal as well. But yeah, good point. Really good point. This is just the beginning, Catherine. I think.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, the purpose of this is to really provide you a guideline. It's high level, but it does require a conversation. Yeah.
Amanda?
I just wanted to clarify then, this request process is
Now, knowing that there's those 2 AI tools that are approved, if we're wanting to use either one of those tools, we're filling out this form to put forward that suggestion as to why we want to use the tool. Is that, I'm just wanting to
Not for
clarify
the
that.
approved, not for those 2
Oh,
approved
so not for the
applications.
approved?
No.
Yeah.
No. Only if there is a new AI tool
Yeah.
that you have recognised and would like to look into, then that's where you need to fill this out. Yep.
And similarly, I haven't obviously read the policy yet. Are we asking staff that are using those 2, either of those 2 approved tools, to make sure they're declaring that with their managers and having those conversations and around the use and scope? Because I think there's maybe an assumption that that is or has been occurring. I just want to be clear on the expectations there of how we're learning from the experiences of using the approved tools.
Yeah, so I would encourage your teams to have that discussion and to inform you if they are using those tools. Then yes, I would be encouraging that. Yes.
And just my final comment, I noticed the policy is also intended for volunteers, be it office volunteers. Obviously, there's also broader volunteers like our consumer reps who also have codes of conduct. Do we need to then start to think about the broader implementation and rollout of this policy to those other sort of broader BCNA cohorts? Or has there been discussion into regards to that at this point in time, Sandra?
No, there hasn't been. It's been more geared towards our staff and volunteers, especially if they are working with sensitive data coming out of our systems from BCNA. Yeah.
Okay.
Catherine,
Thanks, Amanda.
did you have a question? You had your hand up.
Yeah, me again. I'm wondering, so things like Copilot and like I'm actually a bit miffed that Copilot is being so integrated into Word, etc. What do we feel about that, and how does that factor into this space here?
At the
Is that
moment,
an approved?
Copilot, no, it's not.
Yeah.
No, it's not approved.
Okay.
Yeah. It's actually a paid subscription as well. It's not free.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's not going to be a natural migration into the Word with Copilot. Okay. All right.
No, not at this stage. No.
Great.
Yeah, Microsoft were clever with that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've integrated it, and then they will charge for that one. I mean, some organizations will, but again, back up to this part, the commercial side of it, as well as all the other bits and pieces, would need to be assessed before it's switched on.
I didn't think there was anything that would make me cancel my Microsoft subscription so quickly, but that was it. Anyway, thank you.
Good on you,
That's
Catherine.
okay. Any other questions?
No? Okay.
Just the one about the parrots in Teams, is that considered AI as well? The one that's taking note taking and all that? Is that?
Yeah. Well,
because that just came up. All the meetings I'm attending now are coming up with a parrot, and
so I would say I would consider that as safe because it's within our tenant, our Microsoft tenant as well. Sorry, I can hear noise. Is that coming? Yeah. So because it's within our Microsoft tenant, then that would be considered okay. Yep.
Cool.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. I hope you learned a little bit. We'll send some of those links shortly in the chat, so you've got them. But yeah, enjoy the journey for AI. I do have a final video to show you. Let's hope we don't all end up here.
The entire customer experience is completely digital. Even our elevators are connected to an AI-powered voice bot. You simply tell it which floor you want.
5. Fire. You asked for fire prevention.
Stop.
Well, I think that went really well.
Yes, just a final little bit, just to be cautious. Thanks for your time, everyone. Hope you have a wonderful day. and week, and
Thanks,
run to
everyone.
Christmas. Bye.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Shaheen.